So it appears to be official. Canelo Alvarez versus Sergey Kovalev on November the 2nd. They haven't talked about a location yet. They've released this trailer on the DAZN YouTube channel. Don't think there's a location mentioned, but it will be, of course, the location that Canelo's choosing. The weight also hasn't been mentioned. Are there any titles going to be on the line? I have to imagine Kovalev's light heavyweight titles will be on the line, or else why would Canelo take that risk of fighting a guy unless he's going to get something out of it, by way of titles for his legacy? Is there going to be a catch weight? Will there be a rehydration clause? These details are yet to be disclosed. Hopefully there isn't, because it will be more significant. It will mean a lot more if Canelo goes up to light heavyweight to fight Kovalev with no rehydration clause and no catch weight. If he beats Kovalev under those circumstances, that's a tremendous win. Now, Kovalev has been looking shaky. Okay, he looked shaky in that Anthony Yard fight. Looked great in the previous fight against Alvarez, but obviously prior to that, he'd been knocked out by Alvarez. So you have to imagine that Kovalev is in the evening of his days. Canelo Alvarez is at his peak. And, Canelo's a strange case when it comes to assessing him as a fighter, because he has fought a tremendously high level of opposition throughout, most of his championship run, if not all of it. But he's had so many fights where the decisions have been, if not controversial, very, very close in reality. I mean, I remember when he fought Miguel Cotto, there's no way that fight was as wide as the judges had it. No flipping way was that fight a complete whitewash for Canelo Alvarez. And he's had several fights like that, which in truth were close, but they put it wide on the scorecards. And then, of course, he's had fights which people genuinely think he lost. Like a lot of people think he lost the Erislandy Lara fight. I personally don't, but a lot of other people do. The Austin Trout fight for me personally was a lot closer than the Lara fight. I felt like that could have gone either way on the scorecards. The Austin Trout fight. He obviously had the two fights with Golovkin, which caused a lot of controversy, both of them, but particularly the first one, which was a draw. People felt like that was a robbery. So how do you assess Canelo in terms of being a future Hall of Famer? Because he's certainly a future Hall of Famer. Yeah. But he hasn't really gone out there at the top level and dominated a bunch of top level guys. To be fair, the Danny Jacobs fight was a decisive win. Yeah, that you can't argue that Danny Jacobs beat Canelo. Not if you're sober. So in the Danny Jacobs fight, that was a nice win for Canelo. That was a decisive win. He didn't knock him out or anything, but he definitely thoroughly outboxed him. But for the most part, Canelo doesn't really have them kind of performances when he fights the elite guys. It's always very, very nip and tuck. When you look at the careers of like Ray Leonard and, Floyd Mayweather and many other greats throughout history, they had fights at elite level where they beat an elite guy decisively. Like they blasted him out or knocked him out. Even if it was a competitive fight, it ended up with a decisive win. Other fights, they had tough back and forth, nip and tuck struggles against elite guys. But there were certain elite guys they fought where they just totally dominated them, blasted them out. Well, either totally dominated them and won on points, or they knocked him out. Like when Marvin Hagler fought Tommy Hearns, he knocked him out. It was a hell of a fight for, 2.5 rounds. But ultimately, Marvin Hagler left Tommy Hearns stretched out on the canvas. That was elite guy versus elite guy. Canelo hasn't really had any of them. That's why it makes, for me, assessing him in terms of being an all-time great. Because that's the conversation we're having now with Canelo. It's not about whether he's a great fighter in boxing or a pound-for-pound fighter in boxing right now. Of course he is. And in fact, many people would put a very strong case forward that if Canelo beats Kovalev, he's the number one pound-for-pound in the world right now. Okay? But the real conversation we're having to have about Canelo is, where does he rank among the all-time greats? Whether you like it or not, Canelo is going down as an all-time great. Yeah, so that's how we're going to have to start assessing his career. And to be fair, obviously, I don't speak Spanish. I don't really understand Spanish. I don't know if Canelo compares himself to other all-time greats. From what I've seen in the English translated interviews, he doesn't appear to, be cocky and comparing himself to all-time greats. So it's up to us, the fans, to have that discussion, But yeah, as far as the Kovalev fight goes, November 2nd, we'll see what weight it's at, if there is a catch weight or rehydration clause. When Floyd Mayweather was still fighting, he was somebody who was extremely cocky and brash and was calling himself the best fighter of all time, TBE, the best ever. And I had an issue with that because Mayweather wasn't as cavalier in his opponent selection, wasn't as gung-ho as some of the all-time greats, some of the other all-time greats out there. The Muhammad Ali's, for example, the Sugar Ray Robinsons. They were guys who were more willing to fight everybody, to take on all comers at any time. Mayweather was a person who was far more selective about who he fought and when he fought him. Far more careful. And of course, that's very smart. But you can't give a guy like that as much credit as you can give a guy who's willing to fight everybody in their prime right now, like a Muhammad Ali, So with Canelo Alvarez, he has fought loads of guys in their prime, from Danny Jacobs to, the Austin Trouts and the Laras and all these guys. I mean, you could say Golovkin was maybe slightly on the decline when he fought Canelo the first time, but he was still fairly close to his prime. So we do have to give Canelo credit for that. And if he doesn't subject Sergey Kovalev to the weight restrictions that Mayweather subjected him to when they fought, you got to take your hat off to Canelo Alvarez, man. Because Sergey Kovalev, even though he's, potentially not what he was a few years ago, he's still a very, very dangerous individual for a guy coming up from middleweight. Sergey Kovalev's got the height, he's got the reach, he's natural. At this weight, he's a very powerful puncher. With Buddy McGirt, he's back to his boxing. He's got a very good jab. He's got stamina even into the late rounds now. We've seen that in 2 fights in a row. Yeah? He finished Anthony Yarde in the 11th round. Got the knockout. He boxed the head off Alida Alvarez in a 12-round fight prior to that. So this is no mean feat for Canelo Alvarez to be taking on Sergey Kovalev. You got to take your hat off to him for even taking a fight at all and pursuing that fight. And again, if he wins it, massive props to Canelo Alvarez. Sergey Kovalev, of course, you don't turn down a Canelo fight. That's for sure. I know initially he apparently did, but, he wanted to get past Anthony Yarde first and see what the situation was like after that. If Canelo is pursuing you, you don't run away. Certainly not if you're Sergey Kovalev. He's not a guy who's seen massive mega fight paydays in his career. He's never fought a guy on the level of a Canelo in terms of a cash cow, right? The biggest name he's fought in the United States is Andre Ward. Yeah, but Andre Ward was never a big, huge pay-per-view seller or anything like that. Canelo Alvarez is. So just from a money point of view, particularly the stage Kovalev is at in his career, he has to take the Canelo fight. Yeah, it's a guy moving up 2 weight classes and all that kind of stuff, but this is a pound for pound top 5 guy. This is a future Hall of Famer, and this is a guy who is going to give you probably the biggest payday not only the biggest payday you've ever had, but the biggest payday you're probably ever going to have. So, yeah, it is what it is. I personally like this fight better than seeing the Golovkin rubber match. I've said that before. I had to say it again because we know what Canelo Golovkin looks like. We've seen it twice already. But Canelo Kovalev, different kind of fight. Kovalev got a different style to Golovkin, different type of skill set, different dimensions. So, yeah, going to be interesting, man. When Canelo fought at 168 pounds against Rocky Fielding, he looked devastating. But of course, Sergey Kovalev is no Rocky Fielding. He's a hell of a lot better than that. They might be similar in size, but in terms of quality of fighter, Kovalev is in a whole different universe to Mr. Fielding. No disrespect. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Canelo Alvarez versus Sergey Kovalev, November 2nd on DAZN. I'm looking forward to it. Drop your comments below. It's happening. I'm out.